Deniz, that's a staggering figure. That's more than half of all software that's out there that people are using in the Middle East and Africa being pirated. What's driving this demand for pirated software?
There are many things that are driving piracy in the Middle East and Africa, but when I look at the reason of piracy, it is because consumers are really not aware of what they are truly purchasing. They go to a store to purchase a PC. They don't necessarily pay attention to the software that is attached to the PC, that is the core of the PC. And accordingly, unfortunately, piracy is a phenomenon in Africa and the Middle East for the last 20 years that I can talk about. There are certain places where piracy is much less than the others. South Africa is a great example. Consumer business in South Africa is not necessarily suffering from the piracy, but you go to Zimbabwe, it's like 90% piracy that we see. You go to Libya, it's a similar percentage. So it varies, and it doesn't necessarily help with the customer experience.
What makes it possible for people to pirate your software? I would have imagined that, you know, by now you've had so much experience and research and development such that you are able to combat and counter that, such that it's extremely difficult for people to pirate your software.
It is, well, people always find ways to do things, so that would be my straightforward answer, although we are taking a lot of measures, and what is the reality is that pirated software doesn't necessarily give the same experience. It's a super poor experience, especially if I may talk about the security. The last few years, you are very well aware of the fact that malware attacks are becoming like higher and higher, and it's really rising on a daily basis, and definitely it has an impact on the consumers, such as like the data privacy is not there anymore. Like data gets stolen, right, with the safety measures that do not come with the genuine software. Data is one, decreased productivity is another one, and again, the customer experience that is poor is also something that we don't necessarily like. So it's still a phenomenon. What I want to link this, if you don't mind, is it's a great fact. According to IMF, in 2030, the largest workforce in the world would be in Africa. This is a great, great figure that I wanted to share with you, and accordingly, we feel responsible for African consumers and small businesses and everyone in Africa to get super connected with the right technology from now, so that we're ready for 2030 together.
Does it appear to you that it's organized, Deniz? In other words, are there syndicates that are at play? Is there centralized production and distribution of pirated software in these two regions, Middle East and Africa?
I wouldn't be able to comment other than saying there are multiple sources of piracy, unfortunately.
Right. And then lastly, which suites of your software are pirated the most? And do you link that to issues of affordability and perhaps the practical use of those suites? I mean, you talk here about your solutions are targeted at small and medium enterprises, groups like students, for example.
Education,
so I imagine
certainly.
that should link to particular suites that are pirated more than others?
Anything and everything gets pirated if they have an appeal to the customer and they are useful to the customers. Like I can say, the softwares that weren't necessarily being sold this much today, in the past, weren't necessarily interested, but today, with the number of people using the software, you see more piracy that comes with that, okay? And if I go back to the question that you asked, I mean, Windows is pirated, Office is also pirated, but since PCs work with Windows, I can say Windows is the first target of piracy for people. Affordability is super important, and that's why we worked the last couple of years with our ecosystem partners such as HP, Lenovo, Asus, Dell, etc., and our Intel, Silicon Valley Intel partner, so that we address two things going back. affordability of the PCs with genuine software, so
Yeah.
that our consumers are happy with what they use and they get the benefit of the PC that they purchase.
All right, Deniz, thank you so much for coming through and sharing your insights on this really important matter around issues of piracy of software. She is from Microsoft MEA, Middle East and Africa.